We're going to be, this is the reason I don't have a syllabus for this. It's because things come up and you just got to get the word out. We're facing a city council meeting this Wednesday with a resolution committing the city to increasing access to healthy foods and adopting a food access policy and planning guide. In other words, the food police. But we'll get into all that later. First thing we want to discuss is principally mankind, since humans are endangered by the very people who are supposed to be most responsible for our welfare. Back in 1888, Robert Louis Stevenson forecast the agenda of utopians such as these. In The Four Reformers, he wrote, Four Reformers was the name of the story. Quote, "Four reformers met under a bramble bush. They were all agreed that the world must be changed. Quote, we must abolish property, said one. We must abolish marriage, said the second. We must abolish God, said the third. I wish we could abolish work, said the fourth. Do not let us get beyond practical politics, said the first. The first thing is to reduce men to common level, said the first. The first thing, said the second, is to give freedom to the sexes. The first thing, said the third, is to find out how to do it. The first step, said the first, is to abolish the Bible. The first thing is to abolish mankind, said the fourth. You see, the social reformers, or so-called social reformers, from the Fabians to the communists to all the communitarians, all those ideologies, they sound all flowery and utopia, right? Utopian. But the one thing they agree on is the extermination of about 90% of humanity. You see, the most liberal of them is Ted Turner, who said about 1.5 to 2 billion should be the population of the earth. However, others go as low as 500 million. On a planet that's now approaching 7.5 billion people, projected to reach 9 billion by 2025, according to Bill Gates, which is a pretty good estimate. We need to literally exterminate 90% or more, some as much as 98% of humanity, so that those remaining can live in harmony with nature. Good example of this and how serious these people are is the modern Stonehenge, Albert, Georgia. On the top of a hill in Albert, Georgia, there stands a huge granite languages on 4 giant stones that support the common capstone, and there are 10 guides or commandments. Monument is alternately referred to as the Georgia Guidestones and the American Stonehenge. Though relatively unknown to most people, the occult hierarchy that dominates the world tells us how to live. The origin of the strange monument is shrouded in mystery because no one knows the identity of the man or men who commissioned its construction. All that is known is that, for certain, is that in 1979, a well-dressed, articulate stranger visited the office of the Elberton Granite Finishing Company and announced that he wanted to build an edifice to transmit a message to mankind. He called himself R.C. Christian. The message on the Georgia Guidestones, and I'm only going to read the first one. There are 10, it's like 10 commandments. Maybe I'll read 1 or 2. Anyway, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. And it ends, number 10, be not a cancer on earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. So you see, there are people on this earth who feel like humans are the greatest enemy of the earth. Did you ever wonder why they're not the first in line for this extermination process? Yoko Ono, widow of John Lennon, was quoted as saying, quote, I want people to know about the stones. We're headed toward a world where we might blow ourselves up and maybe the globe would not exist. It's a nice time to reaffirm ourselves, knowing all the beautiful things that are in this country, and the Georgia stones symbolize that. Well, let's see. We have 350 million people or better in this country. We don't know how many illegals actually. How much of that's going to have to be reduced in order to make the world a better place? And for whom are we making this world a better place? What is the true significance of the American Stonehenge? And why is its covert message important? Because it confirms the fact that there is a covert group of people intent on dramatically reducing the population of the world, promoting environmentalism, establishing a world government, and promoting a new spirituality. The darker side of that is that the dark forces, it's impossible, without understanding the dark forces, it's impossible to understand the unfolding world events. And the fact that most Americans have never heard of the Georgia Guidestones or their message to humanity reflects the degree of control that exists today over what the American people think, which is something I was going to get into, but right now we have to start thinking. So what have some of the people said? Let's see. Dr. Henry Kissinger, who wrote, depopulation should be the highest priority of the U.S. foreign policy towards the third world. Research on population control preventing future births is now being carried out secretly by biotech companies, and Dr. Chapla, a University of California microbiologist, discovered that wild corn in remote parts of Mexico is contaminated with altered DNA, and the discovery made him a threat to the biotech industry because he exposed it. He reported this to the scientific community despite embarrassing discovery that UC Chancellor University of California chancellor, Bundahl, was denying him was receiving $40,000 per year from Lamb Research Corp in Plano, Texas. And the chancellor was denying Koffler tenure. He was the president, Berdella served as president at Texas A&M University before coming to Berkeley. Depopulation, also known as eugenics, is quite another thing. It was proposed under the Nazis during World War II. The deliberate killing off of large segments of living populations was proposed for third world countries under President Carter's administration by the National Security Council's ad hoc group on population policy. Now take into account that now the Secretary of the Security Council, UN Security Council, is our president, Barack Obama. So Steve, Barack Obama is problematic because his future is not, or his intent, or his goal wasn't just, or their goal for him wasn't just president of the United States. He's going to be the first UN president, or whatever they're going to call him, director or whatever. He's headed in that direction, or so he thinks. Whether they will renege on that or not remains to be seen, but he's already been installed as the Secretary of the Security Council. 1992, the Rio de Janeiro First Earth Summit. What a joke. They went down there with the intent. Al Gore led the group from the United States. That'll tell you something right there. He'd already written a book. Let me make sure I get it right. Prior to 1992, he wrote a book called Earth in the Balance, Ecology and the Human Spirit. What the human spirit had to do with his plan of depopulation and all, I have no idea. I know he studied under a professor who gave him the idea. He got the idea in his studies with this climate control freak. And that was what inspired him to write the book. Gore's always had an obsession to be recognized as a pillar of the intelligentsia. I don't know where it comes from. His father was a lot brighter than Al, but Senior was backed by Armored Hammer. He was the chair of the subcommittee that funneled money illegally to the Manhattan Project. Shipments of nuclear designs, missiles, what have you, were shipped through Al Gore Air Base in Montana. Senior's investments were given to him through Armored Hammer, who was at that time the richest communist or non-communist on the face of the planet. Most of his income, and probably to this day most of Al's income, comes from Armored Hammer's oil company. It slips my mind. What's the name of them? Anyway, but it comes from oil. Modern gold, black gold. Anyway, let's see what some of these people say about depopulation. Depopulation policy became a top priority under NSC agenda, Club of Rome, and U.S. policymakers like General Alexander Haig, Cyrus Vance, Ed Muskie, and Kissinger. According to the NSC spokesman, at the time, the United States shared the view of former World Bank President Robert McNamara that the population crisis is a greater threat to U.S. national security and interest than nuclear annihilation. In 1975, Henry Kissinger established a policy planning group in the U.S. State Department's Office of Population Affairs, and Depopulation Global 2000 document for the President Jimmy Carter was prepared. It's no surprise that this policy was established under President Carter with the help of Kissinger and Brzezinski, all with ties to David Rockefeller. The Bush family, the Harriman family, Wall Street business partners of Bush in finance, the Wall Street business partners of Bush in financing Hitler, and the Rockefeller family are the elite of the American eugenics movement. Even Prince Philip of Britain, a member of the Bilderberg Group, is in favor of depopulation. If, quote, if I were reincarnated, I wish to return to Earth as a killer virus to lower the human population levels. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, leader of the World Wildlife Fund, quoted in Are You Ready for Our New Age Future? Insiders Report, American Policy Center, December 1995. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld has been proposing funding and building of bioweapons level 3 and level 4 labs at many places around the U.S., even on university campuses and in densely populated urban locations. In a bioweapons level 4 facility, a single bacteria virus is lethal. Bioweapons level 4 is the highest level legally allowed in the continental U.S. We know how legal things are. For who? For what purpose are these labs being developed, and who will make the decisions on where bioweapons created in these facilities will be used on them and on whom? More than 20 world-class microbiologists have been murdered since 2002. Think about that. More than 20 world-class microbiologists have been murdered since 2002. Is that a coincidence? Mostly in the U.S. and the United Kingdom. Nearly all were working on the development of ethnic-specific bioweapons. See Smart Dust, RoboFiles. Citizens around the U.S. are frantically filing lawsuits to stop these labs on companies and in communities where they live, despite the opposition of residents near University California, Davis, where bioweapons level 4 was planned. It had the support of the town's mayor. She suddenly reversed her position after a monkey escaped from a highly secured primate facility on the campus where the bioweapons lab was proposed. Residents claimed that the University of California, Davis could not keep monkeys from escaping from their cages. If they couldn't keep monkeys from escaping from their cages, they certainly could not guarantee a single virus or a bacteria would not escape from a test tube. The AOL monkey killed the project. Population is a political problem. The extreme secrecy surrounding the takeover of nuclear weapons, NASA, and the space program and the development of numerous bioweapons labs is a threat to civil society, especially in the hands of military corporations. We've got a call.
Sorry.
But I like to get into this. You know, the Hegelian dialectic, and I'm always going back to it, but in his writings, he brings up the master-slave dialect that flows from the theme that reoccurs several times in Hegel. Human consciousness is an inherently social process, and one cannot be fully certain of the consciousness unless that consciousness is mediated through another entity. Basically, a person must receive knowledge of their consciousness from another person in order for that consciousness to exist. Maybe that's why I talk so much, huh? Anyway, the result is that when two self-conscious beings, people, meet, both entities are completely fixated on receiving acknowledgement, not knowledge, from the other, but neither is willing to give acknowledgement. The refusal to cooperate leads to almost immediate struggle, and there is some debate about whether this is literal or more metaphorical struggle, but most Hegel scholars seem to agree that it's abstract and metaphysical. Each entity tries to kill the other. The problem with that is, if A succeeds in killing B, B can't give A the mediation A so desperately wants. Furthermore, B has to die, which is unfortunate for B. Therefore, the two must come to some sort of alternative to this death match. This alternative is the master-slave relationship that Hegel espouses often. One person can voluntarily, the voluntary component is significant, by the way, subordinate, and he uses herself, subordinate herself, and I say themselves, to the other person. This person will become the slave. The benefit to the slave is that the slave doesn't have to die, and the benefit to the master is he has a slave who can provide a conscious mediation for the master. The master can also get the slave to make the world comport with the master's will. The slave does the work for the master, so anything the master envisions in the world can be brought to fruition for the master. However, this relation turns out to have the same difficulties as the death fight. Hegel emphasizes the importance of the work and action several times in his treatise called Phenomenology. Boy, the words they come up with, huh? And there is no exception. Through the slave's work, the slave has learned that he has some sort of control over the world he lives in. He has gained mastery of the world of objects and is thus gaining consciousness. Keep in mind that this is a utopian master here. Meanwhile, the master is not getting what he set out to get from the slave. The master wanted mediation from an equal, but the slave, by definition, is not an equal. Thus, the master-slave relationship ends with each party having a much different role than he originally had. The end point is that Hegel thought this kind of relationship represented a primitive form of human relationship and that a much better strategy would be to cooperate. The further important outcome of the master-slave relationship is the emergency of Stoicism, the unhappy consciousness. The slave begins to realize the slave has consciousness, and thus the slave is free in his head, but not in reality. The slave must either rebel against the master or live a life that does not align with the slave's conception of itself. This is significant, Hegel called the mindset, the slave consciousness, and many people have interpreted his work to mean that no one is a slave who did not both voluntarily become one and continue to be one by virtue of their choice not to rebel. Now, you know, I'm always criticizing the philosophers who created psychology and their little box with the mouse running around in a maze, and their belief that there was no personal initiative of humans that it was guided. But over the years, as I watched what evolved for the last, because I've watched since I was a kid, but especially the last 40 years, and how quick this, what we're facing now, came to fruition, because I figured I'd be dead and gone even if I lived to be in my 90s. That I'd be dead and gone before it actually all was realized, even if people didn't wake up to it. And here we are, beyond what I imagined. I mean, way beyond Orwellian. I mean, this is Bond, 1984. I mean, the insanity of what's going on today is just, to me, back when I was onto this, is inconceivable. I didn't think it could possibly get this bad or this insane. Ted Turner, one of the co-chairs of the State World Forum, they always hold these positions, huh? Is more patient than, oh, wait a minute, I jumped ahead. Let's talk about one of my favorite greenies, Jacques Cousteau. The reason Jacques Cousteau fascinated me was because back when, see if I can find the quote I wanted, because I want to make sure that I get it exactly right, because it's just unfreaking believable. I must have thrown it down here somewhere. Anyway, Jacques Cousteau, way back when, was quoted. Let's see if I've got that's the Stonehenge. I've been throwing paper all over the place because I get so disgusted. And there's two. That's Stonehenge. There's my quote. Anyway, they have some minded professor here. Don't get too upset with me. I've done worse on stage. Let's see what we got here. Maybe I hit it down here somewhere. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's Stevens. Where did you go with stuff? That's all related to that. So, in here somewhere. Must have turned the pages around. Because there's so many of these people who, for some reason, think that they're going to depopulate the earth, but they're not going to be part, or their children are not going to be part of those depopulated. And I have somehow really fouled this up. Because I wanted to be sure that I gave him credit. I like to give credit where credit's due. And certainly, he was talking about to a courier from, it was also quoted in where I read it, was in National Geographic. But this was in another, this started in a conversation with a courier. He was interviewing him. And he made the statement that they needed to kill off, he said, I know it sounds callous, but we need to kill off about 350,000 people a day to sustain life on the planet. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I hear one of them talking about that stuff, one of these experts, I always want to ask them, would they be first in line? Because I think it's important for a person to have the courage of their convictions. So therefore, I think what we need to do is we need to call on these pundits and these media people who support this nonsense to be the first to go into the oven, or ever how they plan to do this eugenics, euthanasia. Anyway, in Security Memo 200, dated April 24, 1974, entitled Implications of Worldwide Population Growth in U.S. Security for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests. That was Kissinger's policy that I had just said. Anyway, depopulation policy became top priority. And the population crisis is a greater threat to U.S. national security interests than nuclear annihilation. They established the U.S. State Department's Office of Population Affairs, the Depopulation Global 2000 document for President Jimmy Carter. Ted Turner said that he's a little more patient than Gusteau. He said he'd allow 80 to 100 years to reduce the population of Earth from 6 billion to 2 billion. In an interview with E! An environmentalist publication, Turner said, the simplest answer is that the world's population should be about 2 billion. We've got about 6 billion now. I haven't done the actual tables, but if every woman would voluntarily stepped up and said, I'll only have one child, and if we did that for the next 80 to 100 years, that would reduce the kind of suffering we're having. Suffering. Is Ted Turner suffering? I can't imagine Ted Turner suffering with all his billions of dollars. I don't think Ted Turner or any of his ilk are suffering. We could have 10 billion people living below the poverty line, or we could have 2 billion people living well. So what they're saying is that if they reduce the population, everybody will be living in a utopian dream. I think the population should be closer to when we had indigenous populations back before the advent of farming. What's he talking about? But population researchers, Paul and Ann Ehrlich, and let me tell you who Paul Ehrlich is. Paul Ehrlich is one of the members of the New American Century. He's also been involved with Wolfowitz and that bunch for years. But back in the 70s, Paul Ehrlich and his ilk took over Greenpeace. The actual founders, the two men that founded Greenpeace, left the Greenpeace because they said it had become a political agenda. Paul Ehrlich was the author and screaming about the new ice age, okay? In fact, as late as the 1990s, there was a lot of talk about the new ice age that was going to freeze us all to death. How that transcended to global warming, who knows? I know that there was a plan for in Rio when they went to Rio, the first Earth Summit. It was planned that they were going to initiate a step-by-step program to convince the public through the media, through propaganda, the threat of global warming and climate change. But the emphasis was on global warming. prior to 1992,
Just so you know, we have 20 minutes left.
Al Gore had written a book called Earth in the Balance, Ecology and the Human Spirit. When that didn't get it anywhere, didn't get off the ground, Agenda 21, the Earth Summit strategy to save our planet, yeah. He wrote An Inconvenient Truth, Earth in the Balance. He won the Nobel Prize for that one. But what is, anytime you hear sustained development, know that they're talking about a socialist plutocracy. Sustained development, Agenda 21 style. How many people have read Agenda 21? I don't know how many people. Is anybody listening?
Yes.
Ask how many people have read Agenda 21?
They're listening, but they're not interacting.
You're not interacting with me.
No, not on a whole, but
I need interaction.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Someone said they're familiar with it.
Okay.
As in, like.
As in familiar what you've read about it, or as in familiar that you read it?
She says, or he, she, it. I don't know who it is, but it says it's over 300 pages.
Yes, it's about 351 pages, but every American ought to read it. And read it knowing that it is a socialist plot. It is an elitist plot to have control of every facet of your life. And proof of that is easy enough, since we have here in the city of Las Vegas, coming up on this city council meeting, the resolution committing the city increasing access to health foods and adopting a food access policy and planning guide. Now that sounds real nice, right? Except that the city of Las Vegas food access policy, how many pages is this thing?
It's like 12 pages.
Okay, 12 pages, and you can bet, access to food means that you don't have to, you can just walk across the street and get your food.
Quarter mile.
Everything within a quarter mile. You can ride a bicycle, you won't need a car anymore. That'll cut down on, greenhouse gas emissions.
The plants need.
Yeah. I'd like to make go into this greenhouse gas crap, because the fact of the matter is that the North American continent has been sinking CO2 more than it's been emitting CO2 over the past 2 decades. Why? Because we plant more trees than we cut. Farmland that's no longer farmed is planted with trees. Before they started spraying this crap in our air, foliage was increasing, plant life was increasing, and for some reason that didn't suit the government or the powers that be and Monsanto. Now we're going to go into Monsanto a lot deeper, but let's talk about take a moment, I know I'm skipping around, talk about chemtrails.
Someone wants to know what else is in the food access policy.
Oh, let's see. A bunch of stuff.
Can we get more details?
Yes, you can go, as a matter of fact, you can download the Food Access Policy and Planning Guide.
I posted it on Facebook.
Okay. Melissa will post it on Facebook, and we're going to try to initiate an information package about this in Agenda 21 in Monsanto. We're going to start pounding. We do better by sending information packages to each council member, delivering them. Melissa and I have done it. Because they remember who you are. Trust me.
I think you're hard to forget anyway.
And we're going to start doing it with the legislators. If we've got to go up to Carson City and walk in, what's the guy's name that blocked the bill?
Cedarblum?
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, if we got to walk into his office, or if we have got to ambush him somewhere, he's going to get the package.
I have a question about the resolution. I know that when we were fighting the drone resolution issue, we kicked ourselves for not telling them to rewrite it. You know what I mean? Now, I looked through, did you actually look through the actual 3-page resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, so I looked through that, and there are some good things in there, but they're twisted. You know what I mean? It's like the thing about making space for gardens and taking away like restrictions on you to have your own garden. That's about the only good thing I see in there. But as long as they don't regulate what you can put in your garden.
But the thing about it is, they want to regulate what you can put in your garden because they want you to use GMO seeds. Yeah, they're going to. Well, because Monsanto. That's what Monsanto's all about. But there are a lot of arms of Monsanto. Okay.
I was just wondering if maybe like what if we rewrote the resolution? I mean, and then submitted it to them. Like, is that something worth talking about?
Well, the problem is the intent of the resolution is Agenda 21.
Truly.
So if we rewrite it, no, we want to stop it. We don't want to rewrite it because we want to stop Agenda 21. Agenda 21 goes against, in the first place, it's oppressive.
Clearly.
I mean, it's clearly about people control, not about your benefit. Okay?
Sure, but I was just saying, if we took the resolution and we said, because they do have, like, it's like the city council is like a huge HOA, right? And they'll come around and say, you can't have a garden here because it's blah, 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 blah. And if we actually were able to get them to acknowledge that, hey, take away the regulations on having a garden in your freaking yard, you know what I mean? Like, they shouldn't have any kind of, so, I mean, if we took something like that and kind of just made it like a page and just said, yes, this is what you should do with healthy food, right? You know, let the farmers market.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Why don't we write a resolution?
Right.
Write a resolution.
Counter resolution.
A counter resolution for the adoption of an anti-Agenda 21.
How do you submit something like that to the city council?
I have no idea. I take it to them and put it in their face.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way I usually do it.
We should talk to Daphne about how she got that one thing taken up by the city council about the NDAA.
Yeah, we need to. Yes, that's a good idea.
And we do. I've heard of cities adopting. There was one in Atlanta that just adopted an anti-NDAA policy, and they would not implement anything that had to do.
What people need to understand, and you bring it up. You brought it up, and I need to address this.
Mm-hmm.
What people need to understand is that the NDAA is the enforcement arm of Agenda 21. You have to understand that they're going to use the NDAA legislation to enforce their Agenda 21 objectives, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So everything that comes out, like this City of Las Vegas food access policy, they're not telling you that they are going to force it on you once they adopt it. They do things, it sounds all fruity and good and it smells good, and then when they actually do it, it stinks and they're standing over you. You can't do this, you can't do that. It's kind of like seatbelt laws. Back when they started that crap, I fought violently. I was vigilant in that battle against it and tried to explain to people that once they initiated that law, they could be able to go into your automobile, which was totally unconstitutional and had been prevented up to that time without a warrant, just like when they went in, come into your house. Well, I failed. We have seatbelt laws. But it also after I saw it happening, the enforcement of it it's like the monkey principle. They force you to do it so long that it becomes automatic. You get in the car, you put your seatbelt on because you don't want to pay the fine, right? Well, you do it over and over and over, and it becomes automatic. So what are you doing? You're learning to follow their command. What's the latest one? I was trying to think. There's another good one. But we're going to attack this milk thing with the governor too.
Well, maybe that'll include the healthy foods, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now that we can have farmers markets on every corner, which is fine, I'm all for farmers markets, you know what I mean? But like, do we really have to go changing the planning documents in the city to say that, you know, you have to be able to have a grocery store within a quarter mile of your house, and that you can only have so many liquor stores, because they're also going to legislate against the unhealthy
But they're
food,
trying to
you
do
know?
what you have to understand is when they do that, everything's going to go up.
Okay.
I'm talking about cash wise. I'm talking about the building. Building is going to go
Well,
up.
yeah, it's up, not out.
It goes up, not out.
Yeah.
And what happens is there's no such thing as private property.
Yeah.
They're doing away. The object is it sounds good, and we'll get into it when I go into Agenda 21.
It's much easier to bomb a
It
city when
sounds
everybody's in the city.
exactly, but it sounds good. It sounds all fruity. But the first two steps, the third step does away with the second step, or the last step does away with the second step, and it simply doesn't work. What they're doing now, this development, this sustainable development program, and rebuilding the inner cities, it sounds good to them because you have the property owners and this and that are involved and all. But what they don't realize is that when it all accumulates and they get to the end run, they don't own that property. The government does.
Yes.
And so therefore they'll confiscate it, eminent domain. They'll confiscate it to run it like it should be run, and they'll hold it like it should be held. And all these realtors and all these people involved in these things are going to find out that they have absolutely no interest in it.
The city is literally a giant HOA.
Oh sure, oh sure. It gets bigger and bigger. I mean, you know, and what they don't understand, I don't know whether maybe they didn't read Agenda 21 and have the reading comprehension to understand what the true objectives are. Because the elites have made no
bones about it.
They've made no bones about it. They want to do away with property. That's a Marxist goal.
Yeah.
They want to do away. There's no such thing as private property. Government owns it all, and every citizen owned by the government. Because that's what citizen means.
Get rid of the family.
You know, I got a little. I'm gonna have to screech over here for a minute.
Okay.
Let me see have I got one? Got this little book. It's a real good book. Came from InfoWars, okay? Because I ordered a couple of books through Amazon, and they came from InfoWars, and I get them real quick now because I've ordered so many books from them. They like me. Anyway, it's called The Citizen's Rule Book. Now I looked at that title and I thought, huh? Don't we have enough Citizens Rule books? We got Title 38, Title 17. I mean, you know, we got a whole UNC, whole United Code. And then I went in here, and there's a whole bunch of good information in here. There really is a whole bunch of good information in here.
You want some water?
And no,
Okay.
I'll just choke to death.
All right.
Anyway, it tells about jury rights and what juries should be, and the handbook of for jurors. And I mean, there's just a wealth of information here in a little bitty book, and I like it, except that it says Citizens Rule Book. I'm sorry, that denotes that I'm a slave of the state. That's a problem. That's a problem. And of course, we have to function within the parameters. So we've got to go before the city council and find a way to educate these people and I say that, I'm not being facetious, they need to understand that the things that they are doing now are going to affect their progeny as well as ours, okay? They have to learn that their self-interest, their
green agenda.
yeah, their green agenda, but no, their green agenda is money.
Well, but I was
Okay.
gonna say the problem with city council is that they really don't. I don't think that they really see the problem. I think they think they're doing something good.
Yes, of course,
And
because
that's the issue.
it all sounds tutti frutti.
Right, and you know, hey, saving the environment's good, and I'm like not saying that it's not. Like you're really doing it, like to chemtrails,
Yeah, sure.
like you know, other pollution
If
that
you're
really
if
matters.
you're really doing something for, especially magnonously, for the environment that's real, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But this chemtrail thing, for example,
That's a
has
problem.
destroyed the coconut trees in Hawaii, and the people know it.
And they're not
I
doing
mean,
anything about that.
The things that are obvious. I mean, you watch these planes lay grids of aerosol and have somebody try to tell me, oh, that's natural. Oh, come on, please, people, wake the hell up. And if they're spraying something, I don't care what it is. I don't care if they're spraying water. And it's not right. And they admit that they're spraying. There's aluminum, there's barium, there's all of these chemicals that are way above the toxic levels of the CDC, and they won't let the EPA talk about it, and we get an F for pollution here in Las Vegas, and the city council doesn't even know that we're not the ones contributing to that pollution. What's contributing to that pollution is what they're spraying on us. And anybody that will look up can see it never goes more than 3 days without them spraying. Sometimes they come day after day after day. And you can tell the difference because it'll go from horizon to horizon without dissipating.
Well, they're flat. They're just flat, weird looking.
And you watch them. Well, some take different forms. So they're not, obviously they're not always spraying the same damn thing. Okay.
Yeah.
But the important thing, the government has admitted it. The DOJ back in 1995, the DOD had a meeting about it, weather control and what have you. The Monsanto in 2010 advertised development of an aluminum resistant seed. So they're doing these hybrid seeds to resist what they're spraying on us, and they're forcing people. Already in Hawaii, there are places that have been forced to turn to GMO foods because it's the only way they can survive.
All right, we got to wrap it up.
I hope to see you all. I hope to hear from some of you on the city council meeting Wednesday for the city council.
We'll make a page for it on Facebook. I'll get with Tasha
and we'll prepare a
counter resolution.
Counter resolution. We'll prepare be prepared to fight.
Because they have the city attorney has recommended this resolution pass. So the recommendation of the city attorney is to pass the resolution and.
And what does the city attorney know anything about Agenda 21? What does the city attorney know anything about food access policy and planning? Where does this guy get the expertise? Who is feeding him the expertise to make a decision on this?
Oh yeah, they have some companies that they quote that they did
And,
studies on.
yeah, but here's the thing: you've got the
yeah.
EPA. You have the EPA. You got to remember that the Agenda 21, when they're getting the financing for all this, they get every city involved in the development of this. It goes through HUD, Department of Transportation, and the EPA. There's another one.
Well, and then for the redevelopment stuff that they do, which is huge, that comes directly out of your property taxes to do that stuff.
Yeah, and when you make an application, it goes through HUD, it goes to the Department of Transportation, and
Oh no. I don't remember. An application for what?
any application, well, for these
Programs? What?
for these programs that are
Oh, the planning department?
the planning department,
Yeah.
the
The third one? I don't know.
yeah, for the sustainable development.
Yeah.
And so it's set up, so Department of Transportation, HUD, and I think it's the EPA, but there's three state departments that are involved in getting the application,
Well, it would absolutely be the EPA.
and they were, well, you'd think the Food and Drug Administration would be involved too, but they're not, or at least not
Yeah.
directly,
Wow.
because the application actually goes through HUD.
Application for what?
The application for the funds
Uh-huh.
for the
Program?
sustainable development
Okay.
of these communities, which is, in our city, our whole city. So that you doctor it up, set it up in sections, and they've already got the sections designed. I think it's in here even, the map.
Yeah, I was wondering if for that.
That's what the map's for.
I thought that if we complied with these types of regulations and environmental regulations, we got federal funding. But as in if we make the speed limit on the roads 65.
You
like
get
that
some,
type of
yeah,
stuff.
but that's federal funding for something entirely different.
Right, but I'm just saying that's how we
This
did that.
this is the setup. This is how it's set up, and I've got the whole design. I'll have to go through it.
Yeah, we'll have to go into it next time because we're really running out of time.
Okay,
Okay.
let's cut it for today. And because, like I said, I intended this to be a history lesson, but it's got to be more than that.
Okay, thanks.